I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel, and today we got a good show for you guys. I got a special guest that's going to be a reoccurring guest that's going to be on the show. We're going to be talking about the Bryan Kohberger case again and going into a survey that I've never seen before. And I spoke with Dr. Vona. She's never seen it before either, and so we're excited to go into this survey and break it down for you guys. And maybe I think there's some interesting stuff there. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys of our website and our partnership with DataSil. If you have any questions about your privacy, whether it be your personal information, address, phone number, date of birth, those type of things, religious preference, voting preference, make sure you check out DataSil, get a 5% discount. They'll get all that stuff wiped off the interwebs, and you won't be disappointed. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest of the hour, Dr. Vona. How's it going?
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Doing well. It's another day above ground, so I can't complain. That's what I normally say when people ask.
You've been live all day, haven't you?
I have. I had I covered the Karen Reed trial today, the hearing today, and then I did a Steelers podcast, and then now I'm here.
You are just killing it.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting, so it's fun to get involved into those things, especially the Steelers stuff. I know how you were a little bit late to the show because you were watching some Aaron Rodgers highlights. It's okay.
Oh, I was at work. I apologize.
No. The Aaron Rodgers highlights. I get it. That's what you were watching.
I was. Right. I'm wearing my green for my Eagles.
There you go.
I was watching Deshaun.
Well, real quick, before we get into today's conversation and today's topic, I do want to clear the air on a couple of things, on some things that I may have said yesterday that I think some folks may have taken out of context. You know, I spoke on a few things that pieces of information that I may have. One being that I had received the 911 call, you know, and I had it in my possession for a while before I released it. That was accurate. I did. And the person that obtained it, that sent it to me, got it through a Freedom of Information Act. When it comes to the suspect vehicle 1 footage, if you go back and listen, what I said was I nearly aired it. Didn't say I have it in my possession. I said I nearly aired it, meaning that it was I've seen it, not all of it, obviously, because there's like multiple hours of it, but I've seen probably about the same as much as what Dateline has put out. But I don't have it in my possession. I was going to air it, and I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. It was not sent to me because that was part of Hitler's, frustration. Now, what I can say about it is that it was obtained before Bryan Kohberger's arrest. So before the gag order was a thing. And finally, the crime scene stuff. What I have seen is not obtained by law enforcement or the prosecution. What it is items that were present at the crime scene, but not the crime scene itself. And these items were released by law enforcement back to the families. And so it's not something that's going to be used in court or anything like that. And it is just items that were at the crime scene at one point and obviously no longer there. Now, there's nothing that says I can't release those photos if I didn't want to, because has nothing to do with the case per se. But out of respect and decisions and respect for the families, all of them, I prefer not to do that. There are things, in my opinion, that are more important than views and people's opinions or thoughts and things like that. And I value those things much higher, and I won't show those things. Just like I promised that I wouldn't play the 911 call. And the reason behind that was because I don't talk to all the family members. I really don't. I don't talk to all the different families. And, when I aired it when I knew that the news was airing it. The reason being is because at that point, there's nothing I could do, but I don't talk to all the families. And I thought that would be inappropriate of me. Now, once it's out, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so that's why I waited until the moment that it was out.
You have integrity.
Yeah, exactly. I tried to do things the right way, which I would never, ever violate a non-dissemination order or try to jeopardize any case in any form or fashion. So for those that are thinking that way, you're very wrong. And so I just wanted to clear the air on that.
You're always going to have haters, Daniel.
Oh, of course.
I tell my daughters all the time, if you have 8 haters on Tuesday, figure out how to get to 10 by Wednesday, because that just means you're doing something right.
Exactly. And in the end, I just like the 911 call, even the crime scene photos. I promised I would never show those things, and that promise means more to me than a couple of views. I'm sure I could get views if I broke my promises or whatever the case may be. But no, that's friendship and respect and me keeping my word mean more to me than any of those things.
That's so hell I am. That's so such a fresh breath of air to hear that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of us out there anymore, Daniel.
Yeah, I've noticed that, even with for instance, the 911 call, it was released in parts by other folks. And, I had a mutual understanding about that. And they were disappointed that it was released in that manner and not held on to until the appropriate time. And so, I made sure I stayed within those lines. You know what I'm saying? And so, all righty. With that being said, and with that out of the way, let's talk about today's show. Now, I was sent a survey or a questionnaire or a platform. I don't even know how you describe it. It is a website that apparently Bryan Kohberger was associated with. He had an account with, and he had asked a few questions. Now, from what I understand, this is a site called Quora. It's a knowledge sharing platform and social media Q&A website where users can ask and answer questions on a wide range of topics. It functions as a search engine, social network, and content site, allowing users to learn, share knowledge, and connect with others. Now, I strongly suspect this may not be 100% new to everybody. And the reason being is on this account, there are 16,000 views. I just don't see that there's going to be 16,000 views following a regular profile. Now, I have confirmed that this profile is attributed to one of Bryan Kohberger's email addresses. But 16,000 views. This person joined in December of 2018, and the profile is called Mastery and Auto. You can say the word. There you go.
That just means self-taught, you guys. You guys wait till you see all this stuff. I'm like dumbfounded. I'm almost speechless.
Yeah, there's some pretty good stuff here. And like I said, I have confirmed that this is associated to one of his email addresses. So Mastery is his username. What does that tell you about himself? He created this profile back in 2018. So this was 10 years, not 10 years, I'm sorry, in 2018. So this is about 4 years ago.
Right. So it would have been like 4 years before the homicide. So first of all, when I saw Mastery and then autodidact, I was like, he's claiming to be like a self-made master, which just fits with everything we've said so far. He's smarter than all of us.
Yeah. That was one of the things when you pointed that out when we talked right before the show. I thought, you know what, that's an excellent point.
That was the first thing I noticed as soon as I saw it. I was like, oh, of course he named himself Mastery.
Now, 2018, this is 4 years before the murders. That's what I had meant, not 4 years ago. 4 years before the murders. This would have been probably while he was in DeSales, just starting off in DeSales. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, because he was at DeSales in his master's for 2 years. So not at DeSales, but in his master's at DeSales, because he got his bachelor's there too, right?
I'm not sure. I know he was in Northampton for a period of time too.
He was at community college first, and then he went to DeSales and finished his bachelor's and then his master's. So this would have been during his master's. Gotcha.
It's 2018, and I know that some people are going to look at some of the ages because there's some ages in here that he throws in. He says, I'm X age, I'm this age, and he changes it. Obviously, it's the same profile, and he's just kind of lying about his age. But I did want to point that out, that there are, the average Kohberger may see it and see it that in one question it says I'm 15 years old, and they might jump to a conclusion saying, oh, it's not Bryan Kohberger because in 2018 he wasn't 15. The next line he says he's a different age, and so he kind of throws that off a little bit. And when we get there, I want your opinion on why he might be doing that. But let's start off with the first question that he puts out there. His first question is, does a mean score of 58.95 for a class of 14 students or a class of 14 student mean a lot scored low? What do you think he's trying to figure out here?
So here what's happening is we're talking about statistics. So in statistics, you guys, if you remember the bell curve, the center two pieces of the bell curve accounts for 50% of the population. Then we have about 25% of the population that's going to do less than, and 25% that'll do better than. And this is just an average. So he's using the bell curve here, and he's letting the person know that, number one, it depends. If you have 14 students, and you got if the top score is 60, then you did really well, because a 59 out of 60 is an A. But if it's out of 100, now we're looking at that's actually a failing grade of 58.9. So this is the thing, you guys. I don't disagree with any of his answers. So
these answers aren't his.
Oh, they're not. He's not answering the mastery one.
I thought these were all his questions, but maybe he is the one answering. You might be right.
I thought he was the one answering the questions.
That could be
mean a lot. That would be a big difference.
You know what? You could be right. That could be why some of the questions come in with different answers. I mean, different ages.
That's what I thought, because I didn't notice any different ages, but that would make sense. So if you read it, I think he's the one that is answering. And over here, he's just letting the person know that this just means that, it really depends on the context. And I actually agree with him.
There's a couple of questions, or a couple of reasons why I think he was doing the asking, and I'll point them out here in a second, but we'll look at it from both him asking and then potentially being the one that answered.
I would assume, Daniel, that he would know the answer to this.
Okay, yeah. So people are saying that he's answering.
I think he is too. And just so you guys know, mean, just in case somebody isn't familiar, just means the average. So the mean is the average.
All right. So his answer is the interpretation of a mean score of 58.95 is relative to the maximum possible score. If the maximum possible score was 60, then your class excelled. maximum possible score was 100, then your class indeed scored poorly. You know, first and foremost, one of his, I guess, classmates had recently, I read this, that he recently said that one of the things that he had done was he answered the most simplest questions in the most complicated ways.
It's so funny you say that. I have my notes written down, and that's one of the few notes that I took was that how when I was reading his answers, there's one in here where he talks about percentiles, and when we get to it, I will summarize his entire thing in one sentence. Like he could have made it so much easier to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with that. That's the first thing I thought of when I read this. I was like, wow, that person was right. He does the most in all of his answers. Yeah.
See, at first when I got it, I looked at it. See, I've only gone through it once, and I really haven't taken the time to look at it. And I was like, I wanted to ask you, I was like, man, why does he keep changing his age? And so
no, I think he's the arbiter of information here.
Yeah, I think he's the one that answering. All right. So he goes on to say, if you're referring to 58.95 as a percentage, then this is the same as saying 58.95 out of 100 points, and your class did not do well. In theory, half of the students scored below 58.95, which means that a lot of students scored poorly, half or more. The mean may be taken to be a predictive trend in the data for the purpose of your question, but more information is needed to accurately determine how many students actually scored poorly.
I would have answered that by saying, question, is it out of 60 or 100? If it's out of 60, you did well. If it's out of 100, you did bad. The end. Like he didn't need all that other fluff. That's just to make his, I don't know. I feel like he wanted to look really smart in these. When you read them, you'll see.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going through it, and it's
not
every answer is like a
Mm-hmm.
book. So let's go to the next one. It says, in a 40-item test, Josie got a score of 28, which is third quartile. What does this mean? And then he has paragraphs in this.
He does, and you guys, this whole thing, you want to know what he's saying here? All he's saying in all of this is that it just means that you're in the 75th percentile. That's all it means. And he had to write all of that. That's like bananas to me.
Do you think this is why people didn't like his grading? Like if you had a test and or a paper and your grade came back and this is what you saw as far as like nitpicking certain things, maybe perhaps an over explanation, how would that make you feel?
So in school, I would have expected it. And I have to be quite honest. So just getting my doctorate degree too, there were times where my students would be like, yo, we're not, well, sorry, my dog just flew down stuff. They would say something like, my gosh, like we're not doctorate students, like, or you're grading us so hard. And I had to like regroup and reflect and be like, they're so right. Like they're not doctorate students. I think the difference is I don't know that he would have been able to take that criticism. Where I took it and I adjusted. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are so right. You're not doctorate students. Why am I grading you as such? And then I just switched it up and we were good to go.
Yeah.
But if somebody wrote all this stuff, look at all that. Look at that whole answer, all for him to say that it just means that they're in the 75th percentile. And then when he goes on to explain percentiles and another one, he does all of the stuff, like explaining it backwards pretty much. All he had to say is if you're in the 69th percentile, it just out of 100, you're at number 69. So 68% is up under you, and then the rest is above you. That's all he had to say. But he goes on this whole tangent. And the way he explains it, I was like, wow, that was like very difficult for, like, I could have answered it in one line.
Yeah, man. Is it kind of weird that I answer questions like this?
I do. Well, it depends. So if it's my students and they're learning something from me, then I do, because then I want to explain where it's from. But he doesn't know these people.
Yeah, no, I know. Like when I was in college, and we had to do group stuff, they would always ask me or they would when they would ask me the question, I'd always come up with this like thought out explanation, kind of like I do on the show. I come out with a very thought out explanation of things. And a lot of people be like, what? And I was like, man, you guys got to record it because I can't re-say what I just said. But
and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
I work things backwards and inside out, the whole nine yards.
That's what I was saying. I actually agree with a lot of his answers here. I think he goes about it. Like, I think that this website, it is a place for knowledge. However, everyday people are using it. So I feel like he thinks he's like talking to all like doctorates or something here. Like I feel like he doesn't take into consideration some of these questions. I feel like are basic questions and they deserve not a basic answer in a bad way, but I feel like the person asking probably read this and was like, huh? And then had to repost it and be like, what does that mean? Like the way he goes into everything is just so detailed.
Yeah. This one was interesting, you know, and when I read this one, I thought this was about him because he scored like a 119 here recently, apparently, supposedly, on
Did
an
he?
IQ test. Yeah, apparently, according to defense documents, he scored a 119 on his IQ.
That
And
means that he's above average, you guys.
right, you know, above average, but not the brightest guy in the world
No.
either. You know, just above average.
Well, just because you're above average and like, and he actually brings up a good point here. He talks about Sternberg's intelligence. So there's multiple intelligences. So, and it's funny that he puts it up there because one of them is interpersonal skills and he does not have that intelligence. But this is just one form of intelligence. There's many types of intelligence. So even if he is super intelligent, book smart wise, it doesn't mean that he has common sense or street smarts.
It's true. And so this one was interesting. So the question is, let's say I take an IQ test and score a 90 before being diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety disorder. After treatment, I score 120. Could one say that the treatment has made me smarter? And I think the easiest way to say this is the fact that, you know, you're probably, you know, having less distraction with treatment and things like that. You're probably able to focus a little bit better. It's not necessarily that you're more intelligent. It's just that you have a clearer mind while you're taking this test and you're able to focus in on your knowledge. And, you know, it's not making you smarter. It's just you're more in tune.
So
But no,
Daniel,
this guy goes into,
that's how she should have answered. The way you just said it is how he should have answered.
yeah, no, this guy goes into like, all right,
Yeah.
imagine you have a picture and it's sunny and it's cloudy on another day and it's the same camera. It's just the lighting's different because of the sun and the clouds. It's the same thing here. And I'm just like, you know, I understand painting a picture because that's important, you know, when you're explaining things that somebody grasps what you're saying. But this is like overkill.
I agree. You just explained it so well.
Yeah, I just it was interesting. And then
And
this
I
is when it
feel
threw
like,
me
I
off.
feel like the way that you explained it, anybody that is reading the answer would have been able to read that and understand it. Where I feel like a lot of the stuff he does, you almost have to go ask somebody, like, what did he mean?
Do you
Like, we're
think he
just
got
so,
off on that? That people were
oh, yes.
confused by what he says?
Oh my God, yes. Because that would just mean that you're not as intelligent as him. He even says in one of these, I don't know which one it is, I wish I did, but he says something like about how they wouldn't notice anyway over a certain amount because the person would be so smart that it wouldn't matter if you're super smart or super duper smart, pretty much. He doesn't use those words, but that's pretty much what he's saying. But he's like pretty much letting the person know that they wouldn't even, like if their other person is so smart that they wouldn't even get it anyway type thing. So it was kind of like, but you get it because you're writing about this, right? Like, I don't know. He's very arrogant in these, if this is him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. All right. And the next one is I'm 13 with severe depression. I cannot concentrate in class. I've been thinking about getting antidepressants. Should I? And I want to read this one because I think it goes into detail. I mean, I didn't know he's the one that wrote this, so I want to read it because he was very aware of himself and he talked about his mental issues and his effects with certain medication. So I'm curious to what he's going to say. So it says, severe depression is not a condition, though major depressive disorder is. The wording of your question makes me infer that you have yet to see a psychologist regarding your symptoms. Firstly, depression is complex and certainly on a spectrum. Quorons should not give you advice on medication or the severity of depression. Rather, we should simply give you information to precede your consultation with your medical professional. Severity of a disorder and subsequent treatment should first be verified with a doctor. In short, see a psychologist, psychiatrist. You must differentiate between an episodic depressive mood is just a phase, and a depressive disorder owed by cognitive and or neurochemical basis. All right. Obviously, the guy he's talking to is 13. Like, what the
I'm so glad that you pointed that out. I'm so glad you pointed that. I don't even know that I would have responded to this person because they're 13, and I wouldn't want to give them advice that they might misunderstand or something. So the fact that he even feels like the authority that he could even give this 13-year-old advice, like he should have just been like, "Look, kid, go talk to your parents."
Yeah, exactly. Then he goes into like there are various reasons. One may be experience, episodic depression. For example, one may find themselves isolated or lacking socialism due to the pandemic. Maybe this has led to a lesser physical activity as well. Let me see.
The
The
fact that he
answer is
writes episodic and not episode, like this 13-year-old's going to know what episodic means. He could have just wrote it's an episode.
yeah, that's true. That's true. The answer in either case would be the first address this lack of socialization and or physical activity. Another reason would be that you have recently suffered a loss or had well, I mean, he's going into a bunch of things that he has no idea. He's just rambling. That's crazy.
I wonder if Bryan Kohberger was going through any of this stuff, because I always tell people that we see in other people what we see in ourselves. So I wonder if him or somebody else that he was close to was going through, like, where did he come up with all these things? Like, why is he using all of this? This is just the most, if I could, like, I can't even think of a better word for this than he's like trying to do everything here. And I don't know why.
Yeah, he even goes on to say, given your age, having a depressive disorder would be rare, and having an episodic depressive mood would be most likely. Does that mean that many teens do not experience depressive disorder? I mean, a lot of teens do.
Yeah, and wait, didn't he say that he did when he was on Tapatalk?
Yeah, he did.
He had depersonalization disorder at 14.
That's true.
How quickly he forgets.
Just that is less likely than if you were an adult. Again, you need to see a psychologist and not on Quora. Oh man, that was crazy.
You should have wrote that at first, and that was it. Like, you should maybe talk to your parents or a psychologist, and that Quora is not probably the place that you should go to for this.
Yeah. Yeah. The next one is, I am 14 years old. I have ADHD, yet a 4.0 GPA. At what range would my IQ be? Now, when I first read this, I thought maybe this was Bryan Kohberger because, I mean, at 14, you're what, 8th grade? It's middle school. Are you looking at GPAs? Like, do you know what GPA is? I don't think that's the right. I don't know. When I was in school, I don't think we used GPAs in middle school.
I
was
didn't
either A,
either,
B.
My daughters, they did. So that part wasn't as, and my thing is, what would that 14-year-old, like, what would be their reasoning for writing this? Like why would me or you write that and be like, I'm 14 and I have ADHD and a 4.0 GPA? Like, so I feel like a 14-year-old probably did write this.
Yeah.
It's more, why is this the one that he picked up to answer?
That's true. So he's answering some children. That's one. What do you think makes him decide to answer the teens questions?
I think that he was a teen already, so he feels like he does have an authority on that.
So he says, well, high IQ may certainly aid one in achieving a 4.0 GPA. There are many other factors which contribute to a 4.0 GPA. For example, the complexity of course material, lecture attendance, attentiveness, and time spent studying are all factors that contribute to one's GPA. Psychological factors, mood, or pathology such as depression, mania, hypervigilance, etc. Again, to a 14-year-old, it's weird. And physical factors, sleep, nutrition, and pathology such as migraine or pain. You would think he's talking to like a peer.
Why not say diagnosis if you're diagnosed with depression? Like, he's using these big words, like, just say diagnosed with. That's all pathology means.
Yeah.
Like, there was just such an easier way to answer all of these. So my thing is, does he do this on purpose? I wonder if he even realizes that he's like, that this 14-year-old probably isn't going to understand what he's saying.
True. He goes on to say, a high IQ does not cause one to have good grades, though one would likely find a correlation to some extent. Your IQ may be below average, above average, superior, or very superior given a 4.0 average. A genius who does not so much as glance at the course materials has no advantage over the individual with a relatively average IQ who invested time in their coursework.
As a therapist, I would say that there's more to that than what he's just saying. I feel like he's the one that that had to study. He's pretty much saying that some people have to study to get good grades and other people it comes more naturally. So I wonder if he's talking about his own experience here. However, if anybody out there is ever going to do stuff like answer other people's questions online, if you have an experience that can help them, tell them about it. I feel like he has experiences here, so maybe that's why he felt like too that he could write back. But he doesn't tell them that at all. So if anything, if I'm a kid and I'm reading his answer, I might feel judged because I might be like, this guy doesn't understand what I'm going through.
Yeah.
But he does in some way, right? Because he tells a 14-year-old that it's not common for them to have diagnoses, but he had a diagnosis or he gave himself one at 14.
That's true. That's true. It's real. What about, well, we were already going over the fact that they're so young. The next one is about drugs. It says here, how can I pass a urine test in 3 days? I use wax marijuana daily. He goes on to say, do not be fooled. You will not pass the urine test in 3 days if you utilize marijuana wax/flower on a daily basis. While theoretically, THC metabolites stay in your urine for approximately 3 to 30 days, your usage would denote the latter time frame. With the frequency of THC usage, you would need to wait up to a month or slightly beyond before passing your urinalysis. Detox supplements and other methodologies of ridding your system of THC will prove futile. How does he know? You think he's failed them?
Probably. And I also think, well, I feel like part of that is common knowledge. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I just like live in an area where it's common knowledge. But I feel like he could have answered that whole thing with, cause you're fucked. Yeah. Like, why go into this whole thing about metabolites and like the guy just asked, am I going to pass the test or not? He could have been like, no, you're not. And if you try to take any like supplements, there might be tests in there that test for those supplements. So just be careful. Let us know how you did. I don't know. Like I feel like he has to go on here and talk about detox supplements and methodologies. Not everybody's looking for a methodology.
How much study do you think he put into these questions?
I guess what? It's funny you say that. I was wondering if he like chat GPT'd any of these, but then I remembered that chat GPT wasn't out back then. So that's why I do think like, I don't think that he answered these bad if they were like questions for college. But the fact that they're questions for online for a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, an 18-year-old, wait till you see what he says about the curfew one.
Yeah, that's the next one. It says, I'm 18 and my mom still gives me a curfew. What should I do about this? If your choice is to live in her household, abiding by her rules will result with the least amount of conflict. That's an interesting way of answering, just right off the bat.
He goes off to say later on in it that if you're planning to go to college, it might be a good idea to stay at your parents to save money. Like, again, I feel like he was answering some of that based on his own situation without being like, yo, look, I'm 20 whatever years old and I've been in this situation. And because I'm going to college, I stayed with my parents. It helped me save money. Like he doesn't do that. He just goes on to give them like this very like scientific answer almost. It's almost like he's trying to provide a scientific answer to these questions when they're just social questions.
Yeah, but resulting in the least amount of conflict. That doesn't sound like he may have had some conflict in his household.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So he's coming from experience here, I think.
Right. Right. Well, you could certainly move out. This option is almost poised to you in a sarcastic manner. It is almost likely your best interest is to have continued support. This is especially if you intend to go to college and work with minimal expenses, depending on your situation. Therefore, negotiating the rules is most effective. Presenting your argument for why it would be advantageous for you to have an extended curfew and do so with the utmost respect and reverence. It's nice giving you advice on how to do it. It's funny. Speaking your case in an organized, level-headed manner will show maturity and likely support your argument that you indeed deserve an extended curfew.
Again, he's coming to this like a problem, like a scientific problem. And he's like, if you go with them with evidence pretty much, and you provide good evidence that's backed with data, they might be able to negotiate with you. And it's like, this is just an 18-year-old. Just go tell your parents that you're 18 and you think that you like, there's just a better answer to this that I feel like the 18-year-old would have taken in a lot better and would have gotten more help from it than what he wrote. Again, I feel like his answers are confusing to a 40-year-old's mind, let alone an 18 or a 14-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just weird, the way he's answering. To me, I bet you anything, this is probably around the time he's taking a psychology class, and this guy is putting himself in the mind of like a psychologist, and he thinks he's Mr. Psychologist to the stars or something, and he just knows everything.
You're right. And I think that also, I think he respects psychologists after reading a lot of these. I can't wait to go through again and like print them out and write on them, because there's just so much in there that you can't even get through the whole thing in a live. Like, you guys, this is just so rich with information. I can't even tell you, like, the fact that we haven't seen this yet is just bananas. This is going to be all over, I think, because it gives so much information and it gives understanding into his thoughts. Somebody over here said that it looks like he's giving polarized answers from what he thought. And again, that goes back to what I was saying. We see in other people what either we don't like in ourselves or what we see in ourselves, right? So I think that he's doing a lot of that here. Like, I put on my psychology hat with this, and I see so many psychological things in the background that I think he's answering literally based on his own experience and not the experience of, let's say, the general public. And this is just my opinion, you guys, so don't come for me.
Yeah. Everything, let me put the banner up before people start
just in case, right?
Yeah, people start getting all mad and start complaining. All right, so this one's interesting for me. It says, I sleep a lot and it's very difficult for me to wake up in the morning. What can my problem be? Now, the first thing that he talks about, or one of the first things he says, one could suggest that you try exercising more. You should try to eliminate meat and excess sugar in your diet. These are things that he's been known to do, working out, limiting the meat, etc. Do you think that the reason why he was attracted to this question is because, or maybe most of these questions, is because of that familiarity with himself?
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely do. You could see so many parallels with this and his Tappa Talk. And like, he has a lot of similar style of speaking and writing that I'm picking up. I picked up a lot of patterns. Like I said, I can't wait to go through this and really dissect it. And then I'll send you my notes on it. But there's just so much stuff in this. I was like speechless. And that takes a lot for me to say I'm speechless. I'm never speechless. I was like, what the heck? And each time I read one, like the next one was even more jaw-dropping than the one before, for me, as somebody that's reading this as a psychologist.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not familiar with this website. I don't know if many are, but if you are, if somebody were to respond back to the question, like we see a question, we see an answer. If there was a response, is that something that we would see? So I've noticed there isn't any responses on his. So I don't know if there's, something to that. All right. So he goes on to say, but your difficulty in waking up may not be as simple as your diet or exercise. Your difficulties may be owed to the following contributing factors: psychological factors, such as depression, recent troubles in life, past trauma, etc. Physical factors, underlying disease, lack of exercise, poor diet, or a combination of psychological and physical factors. In actuality, option 3 is most likely. A physical and mental health are mutually reinforcing. With this in mind, speak to your doctor immediately. No one on Quora is in the position to answer this question. Your doctor must review your medical history, speak with you, and run laboratory tests in order to understand what may be occurring. At first, physical causes such as disease must be ruled out. Then other options may be explored.
After you said that he was taking a psychology course around now, you're so right. Because one of the things that we go over often in psychology is that before you get diagnosed with anything, you have to rule out medical ailments. So you have to rule out that like your headaches aren't coming from a tumor, so that way then you could deal with like stress, and maybe they're stress headaches. So he's actually, like I said, if I were grading these, he would have gotten an A on these. I'm just being honest. Like, he did a good job of answering these just for school, not for a social media type site, in my opinion.
So I clicked on the link and let me see.
I didn't click on any of the links. I can't wait to go back and play with this.
Yeah, me too.
There's so much here.
Yeah. Now obviously this isn't all.
It's good though, because we're getting like new material to look at instead of going over old material, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't seen this anywhere. So I know you said there were a lot of people that like looked at it, but I did notice that it said there were like 500 in the past month. And we're talking about now like almost 3 years ago that this happened. So I really am curious, like, was it as popular back then, or could it have been that since the murders happened, people are looking into this?
It could be. I mean, it could be a number of things. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody pointed it out a while ago and it just didn't come across my feed and I just didn't know, because I'll be honest, I really don't watch too much of other people's stuff. And when I do go into other people's shows, it's like I go into yours every now and then. When I see it, I'll say hello and things like that. But like people I don't know, I have no idea. You know, I don't go looking for people I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I haven't seen this.
And so there's quite a possibility that there was somebody who may have covered it that I just don't watch. You know what I'm saying? And
I haven't seen it, Daniel.
yeah, neither have I. But there was like 16,000 people that had looked into it. So interesting. All right. So it says, you know, when I was reading it, I was like, I started laughing because he goes in to say, actually, option 3 is most likely. Meaning, and I laughed when I said that because he's now diagnosing this person with issues psychologically and physically. You know, he's saying that you probably have depression and lack of exercise and poor diet. The guy doesn't even know what he looks like.
No, and if you think about it with the Tapa Talks, right, he kind of does the same for himself. So there's like, he goes on the vegan diet to get rid of his visual snow. So the visual snow would have been biological, and then the diet would have been environmental. Like, I feel like, again, he's using his own experience to answer these questions.
Now, this one's weird. So somebody goes, the question is, if I had 2 hits of the dab pen and it's the only time I've ever smoked, will I pass a hair drug test? You know, he goes on to say, as blood is circulated throughout your body and eventually your scalp, drugs in their metabolites, my goodness, this dude, metabolitites.
Metabolites. But again, he could have just said, there was such an easier way to say this.
Metabolites. There you go. I was struggling with that word. I knew what it is, but I couldn't read it. Anyways,
you shouldn't really know what these words are. Not that you shouldn't, but I mean, like, these aren't everyday words that we use on like social media. So that's why I'm saying, like, I feel like, does he even know? Is he even aware of the fact that he's like, I guess my question is, his friends or people that knew him said that he would write this stuff and he would have to make it sound, you know, better than what it is, or just like, you know, more intense. Does he know that he's doing that? Is my question. Or like,
oh, of course.
So he's doing it on purpose, right?
It's a way to show superiority. Yeah, it's dominance. A way to show that I'm smarter than you.
Like we've been saying the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So he goes on to say the metabolites of THC will indeed be evident, as well as other chronology of your usage. It will be clear that you vape THC at once and then stopped. This process, a multi-compartment model of diffusion, takes 3 days before enough detectable THC is accumulated in your hair. So if you were to take a test at day 2, you would pass the hair drug screening. Otherwise, no, your use of THC will be evident for approximately 90 days. Then he goes on to show the anatomy of hair.
So bizarre. The other thing I thought was, like, he was already a recovering heroin addict by this point. So I just feel like if I were to write these questions and this is how I got a response, I would feel like somebody was judging me. And it's like, he had no right to judge anybody. Like, he had his own like history. So I just feel like he sounds very like judgy here. Like, if I was the other person and I was reading his response, I would be like, oh my gosh, like, this guy's pretty, or whoever's telling me, like, oh, so I don't know. I feel like this stuff would just get somebody more nervous.
So the next one is my, how do you pronounce that? I'm just gonna say WAIS score high. Do you know what that's called? Is it Waze?
Oh, it's just WAIS. It's it's like an IQ type thing.
Right. But there's not another way of saying it outside of saying all the letters.
No, just say the letters.
Man.
Is my WAS score high? Well, either your IQ score, I'll do it. Either your I score is so unfathomably exceptional that I'm incapable of its perception as plain text. Okay, so there he goes. Or you forgot to include information regarding your score. An IQ of 100 is average. And if this is indeed the WAIS or WISC, it's WISC. WISC is the one that I'm familiar with. 15 point represents a standard deviation. So it has one standard deviation plus or minus. He goes on to pretty much say that an IQ of 115 is one standard deviation above average, and that 130 would be two standard deviations above average, just meaning that standard deviation is 15 points. That just means as something goes up one deviation, it goes up 15 points. It goes up two deviations, it goes up 30, 3, 45, so on and so forth. Such an easier way to say that than to say all of this. This is just bananas. He could have just said what I just said and gotten the answer out, because that's all he's saying here. He goes on to then say that you yourself may not consider having the highest IQ out of 115 to be all that high, but it's nevertheless above average. Now that you told me that he got a 119, that says even more to me, because he's letting this person know that a 115 is the high intelligence score if that's really what you got. Why is he like protesting the score? Well, he got a 119, so that means he outbeat this person. Although the person doesn't tell him his score, now that I'm thinking about it. They don't even tell him.
I was going to say. He doesn't say. He's just going off of some random scores here.
That's his own thought process.
Right. He's saying that one IQ of 130 is 1 out of 44 rarity. Furthermore, IQ of 140 is 1 out of 260 rarity. Man, I thought I was more. So I thought there was more.
Well, 1 out of 55 is a 1 in 8,000. So
yeah, no.
And he goes on to talk about Einstein and some of them. I think I found a recurring theme of, he talks a lot about intelligence tests. He talks a lot about drugs, not talks about them, but like he answers those questions, and one's about like depression and stuff. And again, these are three things. Somebody said he's mansplaining. He definitely is. I'm sorry. But no, but I think he's Bryan-splaining. Let's be honest. I think he's Bryan-splaining. I think he had like his own mansplaining type thing where he just really thought that he was smarter than everybody else. But I think that the ones that he answers are things that he himself dealt with. So I think that there's a greater lesson in all of this, that when people give advice to people online that you don't know, ask, like, reflect on it and be a critical thinker and think, like, instead of thinking, is this guy judging me, think, did this guy go through this before? I wish I could have responded to this and been like, why? Have you been there?
Right. You know, for me, man, I forgot where I was going to go with that. I had something that I forgot. But either way, you know, I know when I was in college, the reason why I say I think this guy was taking like a psychology course is because when I was in college, I took a literature class, and me and the professor became pretty cool, and I make friends easy, basically. And so, you know, I got really involved in the class, and I really liked like how the meaning behind some of the literature that we were reading and stuff like that. And what do you call it? When I would explain things, I got so involved with like words and the use of words. I was explaining things were kind of confusing, and that's why I kind of think that that's where he was. Because
right, but you did that at school. You didn't do that on YouTube.
What do you mean?
Like, in other words, you did that when you were in school. Like, you were in a literature class. You didn't do that on YouTube when you're answering people's questions and stuff.
No,
like,
no,
I feel like he's doing this on, like, this is outside of school.
That's true. That is true.
That's what makes it weird to me. I have a huge vocabulary too, but I don't always use it. It depends on what situation I'm in. If I'm with a bunch of people that are intelligent, stuff like that, I might use it just so that I feel like, and again, it all comes back to my own insecurity. So just like I'm saying with him, it goes back to your own insecurity, you guys. So I would probably use, you know, better words when I'm with people that are academic, just assuming that they're going to use those words. So they're going to, for example, to make better, there's a word called ameliorate. And for some reason, academics love to use the word ameliorate. The first time I heard it, I literally was going like this on my phone, like, what does ameliorate? Because I didn't even know how to answer back to that. I was like, what does that even mean? So I feel like you have to understand these words, but they're not words that I usually use in my everyday language, just with regular people.
Yeah. No, yeah. And then somebody said that I'm not that level of crazy. I'm not comparing myself to him. What I'm comparing myself to, or what I'm trying to say, is that it's common for people in general, especially when they're like learning a subject and they get super involved in it, that they start picking up habits and traits and words from that subject. I think he started to really try to focus in on the psychology aspect of of his studies. And I think that's been something that he was indulged in since he was younger. You know, the Tappa talk, the self-awareness of his potential mental disorders that he may or may not have, even to the point where these text messages are leaked on Dateline and they're talking about sociopaths and psychopaths. And I personally, my opinion, think that he's referring to himself in those
1,000%.
questions. You know,
1,000%.
tells me that he's, you know, he's swayed in that way, you know, especially feeling himself. And what I'm trying to say is, I think he was self-indulged in himself, and what he was hyper-focused into his studies, that it began to present itself in everyday life, including when he was talking to kids.
So he has very rigid thinking, right? So that would go with obsessive compulsive personality traits, not obsessive compulsive disorder. So I just feel like all of this stuff just validates everything I already thought. But I think that, like you said, it goes deep in the way he's thinking. So about himself. And then he's just projecting that onto this screen here. Because again, you have to remember, it's not like he's one here as Bryan Kohberger. He's one here as Mastery. So it's not even like somebody's going to say it and be like impressed with his writing. So again, I think that goes back to what you were saying before, that this is purposeful and his way of exerting authority over others. Oh, did you read the one about the president? That was pretty.
Yeah.
He just goes in on everything.
Yeah, this guy, he's I don't know. I guess he's a anti-Trumper. So he goes on to say, is it true that Donald Trump had the highest IQ of any president in U.S. history? Bryan Kohberger answers no, and then follows up with a picture of the president drinking some water in a very odd way. What do you think about the photo?
I think that he picked a photo to make the president look weak, or like he was, you know what I mean? Or like the president, like to make it look like he's not very smart. Like, I feel like he picked but the truth is, if you just screenshot it at any point of our live, you could get both of us in a weird shot too. Do you know what I mean? So I think it was just, people take, a lot, like rapid photos. So somebody posts this photo. Why did he pick this one and not a different one? You know what I mean? So I think he picked this one because in his head, it shows Trump as being less than smart, even though I'm not saying that. I'm saying in his head, that's why he might post something like this. It's just
apparently, crazy. I don't want to get into too many politics, but I find something kind of contradicting. I read in a article that one of the persons who knew him mentioned that they weren't keen of him because of his LGBTQ statements that he may have made. And then, he's anti-Trump and seems to be lining up with the Democrats. So it seems kind of contradicting to be, anti that.
I don't think that it's about politics, Daniel. I think it's about the fact that the president of the United States is the most powerful person in the entire world. So no matter who the president is, they're the most powerful person. And to show a picture like this, where the president isn't, in his best light, let's say, so it's not like a picture of him all nice and suntanned and stuff, like with a smile and like a thumbs up. He got a picture where it looks like he's fumbling with his water. He did that on purpose so that he could like dumb him down a little bit, even though, again, this isn't me.
Do you think it would have been the same if it was somebody asked, is Biden?
I do.
You think he would have been derogatory towards him?
I don't think it had anything to do with political party. I think it had to do with him thinking he's superior. Like, in other words, like Trump didn't get in there, or anybody didn't get in there because of their intelligence type thing. Like, I feel like it's almost like he has to dumb other people down because that makes him feel superior. But again, this is just my opinion and what I've gotten so far from what I've read.
That's interesting because he answers a question about Albert Einstein, and we'll see how we can compare those questions. But this one goes on to say, for one, Trump never took an IQ test. In fact, he refused to, yet still inferred that he was a genius. While Trump certainly has his strengths, his verbal ability and perspective, memory, and general knowledge, which are manually reinforcing, do not manifest or display strength during his presidency. I would guess that his scores are different. Different IQ subtests would balance out an average FSIQ. There is a phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, where individuals who are around average IQ range overestimate their IQ. This may explain Mr. Trump's views on his own IQ. This might explain yours too, buddy.
Yes, that's what he's getting at. Absolutely. That's absolutely what he's getting at.
Don't conflate IQ with a full spectrum of intelligence, and IQ test measures an IQ, whereas other gifts refer to Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence, such as body
Kinesthetics.
yeah, or musical intelligences exist apart from the IQ structure. Incidentally, one could think of many different types of ability that one may be exceptional in. And then he puts in a multiple intelligences.
Daniel, I
chart.
think you're so smart. I think you're so right. He had to have been taking a psychology class. This is literally in my textbook. Like, it never occurred to me that until you said it. And now as we're reading them, it just says to me more that you're definitely, I think you're right.
Yeah, he was all in it. He was thinking to himself. He was probably getting good grades and starting to think to himself that he knows everything.
That's right.
And, you know, obviously he was getting good grades. He was, you know, recommended to the program. He excelled. He's not, you know, he's book smart, you know, and he even talked about it. Just because somebody gets good grades doesn't mean that they're that much smarter than anybody else. It just means that their time and dedication to their work could, you know, show a better outcome or better work product than a person with a higher IQ that didn't put the work ethic in.
I wonder if he knew his IQ back then.
I doubt it.
Okay, that would say something to me. So that would be, in my head, that would be his way of buffering just in case he ever did take one and it wasn't that great, to be like, well, I could be a genius in other things. Like, you know, body kinesthetics would be things like being able to be flexible and boxing and stuff like that. So I bet he was looking through this. I think intrapersonal relationships, the one where it's the two people, he definitely didn't have that one. But there are different types of intelligence. So people shouldn't think that just because you're book smart means that, you know, you're the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, I agree with a lot of the ways that he answers these, but not for the reason that it should be. I think this is more just him. And I guess this would say something, right, about his ability to have insight. So even though he made a lot of dumb mistakes, I do see insight here. He had insight even at 14 in his TAPA talks. I said that. So he has an ability to like reflect, which just makes it that much more egregious what he did, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If he did it. Let's just put it just in case. I don't want anybody to like.
My opinion is he did. I'm not a judge. I'm
not afraid to say it either. I'm on your show, so I didn't want to like, but I think he did it too. Everything I've seen so far, but if somebody comes out and they give us positive evidence that it was somebody else, I could change my mind, but I just don't think that's happening.
Yeah. For me, it's I wouldn't be able to sit on a jury. It would take a lot for somebody to say that he was innocent, like, and that's not the way it's supposed to be for somebody on a jury. You know what I mean? They're supposed to be impartial. And so for me, I can clearly say that because of the evidence that everybody has seen before I say that I've seen, and somebody thinks that it's so much more than what everybody else has seen. It might be. I'm just kidding. But based on the stuff that I've seen too, I mean, this guy, to me, my opinion, my thoughts, the guy did it. But, you know, we'll see what happens. I think there's enough to convict him with the information that we know. Much less once we find out more, it'll be even clearer.
I so agree. Wait, real quick, when you were saying something about this just made me realize we always say that he had a lack of identity. Could it be that he was finally doing well in school, so he started to identify as an academic, and maybe that's where he's like embellishing on this because he feels like he has an identity in being an academic?
Yeah. That's what I was saying. I think he was getting some pretty good grades. He was feeling himself. He was probably, you know, teachers were probably telling him, "Oh my God, the way you answer the questions is amazing." Yada yada yada. You know, and he's, you know, this was also during the time of the pandemic. 2018. So 4 years. This is 4 years ago from today. So that's like
March 13, 2020. I have a photogenic memory, you guys. It's March 13, 2020. I bet is the day that we shut everything down.
Right. And I think this is 4 years ago from today. So this is like 2021, 2020, somewhere in between there. So pandemic was in full force back then as well. So, you know, this is when he was excelling at his school. And, you know, his teacher, Professor Bolger, said he was brilliant and this and that, but she never met him in person because a large part of his studies with her was during the pandemic. So he goes on to say that clearly Trump has been very good at social engineering and getting what he wanted throughout his life.
Well,
If
he
you
should
want,
have just said then Trump has interpersonal intelligence. So he doesn't even say that, which says more to me that this is about him and not about anybody else.
that's true. That's
Because that's all
just
he's
an
saying
excellent
here is
point.
that Trump has interpersonal
That is
intelligence, but he doesn't say that here.
that's an excellent point. If you wanted to make the argument that other things besides IQ make Trump exceptional, you may be able to find evidence to support this argument. But as far as IQ goes, the evidence is profound. Giftedness is not there.
That's not true. Like, that's not true in the sense that he literally 2 sentences before that talks about how he could be good at social engineering. That is interpersonal intelligence.
That's called confirmation bias.
That
This
too.
guy,
You're right.
this
That was a good
guy,
one.
yeah, he thinks that he knows everything, and he knows that what he thinks he knows. All right, the very next question is about Albert Einstein.
This
That it
was
was answered. So, interesting questions to choose to answer, right? So, what was Albert Einstein's WAIS IQ? Einstein died about 2 months after the first version of the WAIS was released in February 1955, but he was never administered the WAIS intelligence scale. My guess would be that Einstein's ability to perceive and comprehend, as well as infer information from the most minute of detail, far exceed that what the Waze was capable of measuring. Even if he had weaknesses, his overall processing capacity would likely be immeasurable on the modern testing instrumentation. So he looked up to Einstein, is what it sounds like to me.
I think so too. But what is Einstein? What do we all know Einstein as? A genius.
As a genius, intelligent person. I wonder if he also looked up Ted Bundy in the same manner.
Well, that could have been his social, again, I think that he compartmentalizes very well. So I think when he's an academic, he can, identify with Einstein because he's such a freaking genius. And then socially, he's identifying maybe with like a Ted Bundy socially.
Like a
Because he
Dr.
feels like a
Jekyll and
criminal
Mr.
without a
Hyde.
record. Yep, he feels like a criminal without a record, and that's his words.
That is true. All right, the next one is an IQ of 136 okay for a 12-year-old? Interesting that he answers this question. What makes you think he would answer this question before we read it?
Because I think that this goes back to his own intelligence, right? And I think that it's important for him to note here that your intelligence is your intelligence regardless. It doesn't matter if you're 66, but he could have just wrote that.
Yeah.
And he goes into 99th percentile and superiority and da-da-da-da-da. Like, I feel like this is just his own, you guys, like for a psychologist, this was like a psychologist dream. When you sent this to me, I was like, what the? This
was my score at 20 something.
No, but I think the point is that just so you guys know, and this is the Wessler scale. So the Wessler scale of intelligence that he's talking about, and it's the one that we use in psychology, which again, makes me think that maybe he was in a psychology class or just took one. Yeah. I think you're right on with that.
IQ tests as administered by psychologists capture your true IQ score, which is relative to the population. That's the one I took. This means that one professionally scored IQ at 136 at any age is more than 2 standard deviations above the average IQ of 100. 136 means that you are in the 99th percentile and have an IQ score of a very superior range. In other words, you are gifted, which is not just okay, but exceptional in terms of IQ. To reiterate, the IQ score of 136 did not change the dependent upon age. Furthermore, online IQ tests are not professional and therefore our non-standard IQ score of 136 is invalid and unreliable to estimate. So I guess he's skeptical of the IQ score and is thinking that he took a phone game score.
That's exactly right. So that's exactly what I saw in this whole thing, you guys, was that part where he writes, because, nobody, this kid, this 12-year-old has an IQ score of 136. So I could see him. And so then he goes on to say, but if this is one you took online, then it's inaccurate. So again, he's trying to dumb somebody down here.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, wow, you got a 136. You're like a genius. That's all he had to write back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he had to take a jab and say that, yeah, but you're probably wrong.
And he even put in there that you had to have it done by a psychologist. And he's actually right about that. So to take the Wessler scale of intelligence that he's talking about, or what is it, the WAIS, or we just call it the Wesslers in psychology.
Is that the one where the blocks and the shapes?
Yes. Absolutely, yes. But you would
That's
have
what
to
I
do
took.
it with a psychologist. So I think he's saying here, like, it's almost like he's questioning them, like, did you do this with a psychologist? Because if you didn't, it could just be a faulty test and da da da. Because again, why would somebody get a 136? That's like genius.
When I took that test, the very first one they did, it was a 2-dimensional object with different shapes and colors, and they had the blocks that were 3D, and I had to match them up. That's the same one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They told me the average is about, I think they said 2 minutes, and they told me that not to worry. They're gonna give me like 2 minutes and like 30 seconds or 3 minutes to do it. So the average is like maybe a minute and like 45, 2 minutes or something of that nature. First one I knocked out in 15 seconds.
Good for you.
I visually, me seeing things and able to figure them out. That's one of the things that I could do. It was an easy test for me. I was like, boom, boom, boom. The only reason I think it was a little bit lower is because the last one, I had one thing inverted backwards, and it took me like 55 seconds, somewhere around there.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
You
And
still
so,
did it in under time, right?
oh yeah, I still had
That's
plenty of time, but
amazing.
I started to sweat. I was like, holy shit.
I
I was
think
like,
it's
I
important to note.
overestimated myself.
No, you're right. You're right. And I think it's important to note that the reason we do shapes and not like facts is because depending on where you grow up, if you grow up in inner city Philadelphia, you might not get the same facts as somebody who's living in a neighborhood where, you know, just at a different school that has different resources. We did a study, and people in Philadelphia, for example, they spend approximately $9,000 per student per year. And then right like 5 minutes away in a different county, they spend $28,000 per student per year. So you're obviously going to get a different education. So by using things like shapes, and you're able to get to somebody's intelligence without, like an SAT, for example, some people do bad on their SATs, not because they're not smart, but because they've never been exposed to the material. So if you've never been exposed to a cell phone and it asks you on the test, what is that? How are you supposed to know?
Yeah.
So that's why they do the shape. So so in other words, it is a valid test of intelligence. So you probably scored very well.
Oh yeah. No, one of the things that I pick up are details and visual details, and looking at things like I'm a master at that find the object game.
That's good.
That and Minesweeper. I'll kick anybody's tail at Minesweeper. I play that game all the time. Like, have you heard the song "White and Nerdy" by Weird Al Yankovic?
Oh, I have. That's old, isn't it?
That is old. It's one of my
Yes.
favorite songs. And the best part, he talks about playing Minesweeper for days. I was like, man, that's me. I play Minesweeper for days.
That's good though. It'll keep you young.
Yeah, it keeps you focused, keeps
Brain
the
games are
mind
very
sharp.
important. Yes. You should
100%.
play Wordle with the rest of us on Discord.
I'll try. Words aren't my thing. I get words backwards, as everybody can see. I got the dyslexia, so I'll try my best.
That could probably be why you got that 1 in 50 seconds as opposed to 15.
Yeah, that's exactly why. Because it was the only thing that was backwards, and I took it apart and I did it again, and I was like, why is this not fitting? Why is it not fitting? And then I flipped the image around. I was like, oh, that's why. Boom, and knocked it out real quick. But yeah, I was starting to sweat. I did it twice, and it was like, wait, this should fit. Why isn't this fitting? And then what I did was I turned the picture upside down, and then I turned the blocks around, and I was like, okay, boom, and I figured it out.
You were thinking outside the box.
Yeah. I try to
You could
slow
tell.
down sometimes. That's the most important part for me. Sometimes I go a little too fast and I overlook things, but if I slow down and just really focus on things, man, I usually get it right. All right, the next one he answers. So he went from a lot of IQ stuff. The next one is, what is the IQ of an elephant? Interesting one to respond to.
No, but it's the only one that he actually responds in like one sentence. Thank God.
Yeah, it says the intelligence quotient, whatever, the IQ is standard for humans. Therefore, an elephant's IQ is a non-occurrence. Okay. It's still a weird way to, just
so weird. It's so weird. You're right.
The next one is about a dog. So my dog attacks children unprovoked. He just don't like children or other dogs. My vet recommended putting him down. Has anyone else been through this? He goes on to say the decision to put the dog down implicitly makes the assumption that your dog's behavior is uncontrollable and beyond mending. The assumption may be partly correct, but you must ask yourself, is my dog beyond redemption? You might want to ask yourself about the same question about yourself, my man. I have not personally been through this, but have known dog owners in the very situation who have successfully managed their dog's aggression and avoided the euthanasia option. A dog trainer would be the next step and the desired last resort, unless you believe that your dog is not worth the investment of time or money due to the severity of the issue. What do you think about the way he answered this one?
I think it's very interesting, and it shows that he would go out of his way to save a dog in that sense, right? And Kaylee's dog was still alive. I think that it's a misnomer for people to think that all serial killers or all people that commit murder have to, have cruelty to animals. Because if you actually look at the statistics, that's not actually true. So if you have a kid that's like ripping apart the skin of an animal, you should absolutely go get them help. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that they're going to be a serial killer necessarily. And when we look at like serial killers or mass murderers, not all of them had cruelty to animals. So I think there is a difference between the two.
I did see that I found an article that the Buddy the dog incident happened. It says through wildlife. I think they thought it was coyotes.
A coyote, right?
Yeah. So not. I know it's kind of weird because the description was it was skinned and stuff like that, but it sounds like it was
the
a
neighbor
coyote.
suggested that it was like a teenage girl that did it. I was like, oh my gosh. Now that it's like public, I wonder if that teenage girl knows who she is, type thing. Like, oh, I can't believe she tried to say it might have been me.
I didn't know that. That's weird. Speaking of weird, the last question that he answered, or the first question, depending on the way you look at it, because this was 4 years ago. So this would have been the very first question he answered is there a correlation between constipation and high IQ? It's an interesting one to answer. And he goes in to say there is indeed superior relationships between various factors that may be observed, but in all seriousness, there is likely a stronger relationship between fiber intake and constipation than IQ and constipation. So that is his idea of a joke. There are indeed superior relationships between various factors that may be observed. And the reason I say that it's a joke because he says, but in all seriousness.
So why couldn't he just write that it's fake? Like, why does he have to use these big words?
Because the question is in correlation with high IQ. And
you're right. It's about IQ, and he needs to prove his dominance. And somebody in the chat, I think it was Kel, said that he doesn't have to prove his dominance over the animal, which was a good point. So that could be why he didn't write as much there, because it was more like, to him, that was like a stupid question. Like, I can't believe you're even asking that. Like, this isn't made for animals. It's made for humans. Like, almost like, you're not even worth an answer.
Yeah. Man, that's just, he's a weird guy.
You think?
Weird guy. Yeah. I think he's self-indulged. And
I think this is about him.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about him, and a lot of it is about him trying to show people that he's the smartest person in the room.
Over there, he talked about skewed distribution, and that says to me that he's probably taken a statistics class as well, because as a statistics teacher, he uses a lot of statistics language here. And I have to be honest with you, if I use statistics language, I could make myself look real smart, but I don't, because I know that people don't talk like that. Nobody talks about skewed data in real life. Yeah. So I feel like he was just either very out of touch, or he's really just trying to show people that, like, I'm out of everybody's league because I'm just so smart that, like, you know what I mean? Again, he's smarter than everybody else. In his opinion, not in ours.
And I think that kind of goes to, like, if you have this kind of guy, right, with this kind of mentality, how do you think somebody like that could handle adversity of, I don't know, some of what he was going through at WSU that ended up costing him his TA job?
I think that it's a lot of stress. And if I'm right that he's a narcissist, then that would have been humiliation. And humiliation is the opposite of feeling grandiose or feeling large. So the first thing a narcissist or somebody with even narcissistic traits would do would be to prove you wrong. And we see him do this with the weight loss, with the drugs, with the school, with the everything. He's got to, like, do the best so that he could prove people, like, you're wrong about me, whatever you guys thought about me. And then at the end, he winds up doing the ultimate godlike thing and being the arbiter of who lives and who dies. So I feel like, again, it's all about him, even down to the criminal acts that he did.
That's interesting you say that, because I've thought a lot about this case, and I thought a lot about the motive, and I thought that and I've even had conversations with like other creators who have written books and things like that. And I've thought about writing one on what I know and, my interpretation of the evidence and things of that nature. And the way I wanted to start off that is that they doubt, him looking in the mirror saying they doubt you. They're stupid. They don't know what you're capable of, those type of things. Him talking to himself in that manner, saying that, that
I would say that I
out of
have
humiliation. Yeah, out of humiliation for what has been going on at WSU and everything else. He thought he was the smartest person in the world, probably. And I think that he was taking it personal, and that's the way I wanted to kind of, if I write, I don't know. I haven't started yet. I've got some basic outlines and things of that nature. But
if you ever need help with the actual writing part, I'm like a writing genius. That's where my genius comes in.
oh man, I might throw you some information and get you to help me.
We actually have like the same thought process too, so it probably would be easy.
Yeah, it could be. I think you're right. I think you're right. But yeah, I wanted to kind of just, I think you're right. I think it would be interesting to go in through it from a point of view with your assistance as a psychologist, or in the psychology would be awesome. That would be awesome.
I think it's awesome that you're able to pick up on those things. Like I know a lot of that because of stuff that I've been taught and stuff and experiences from, being a psychiatrist. I mean, a psychologist. I just said psychiatrist. I meant psychologist. I think that it's amazing that, that somebody that's not, you might have taken psychology courses, right? But the fact that you've been able to retain all that and then apply it is amazing, because not everybody remembers everything that they learned. So it seems like you've retained a lot of it.
Yeah, and it's also been since high school. I took psychology, and I took college psychology. I think my senior year of high school. So it's been a long time.
That's awesome though. But it looks like you've been able to like hold on to the things that you learned, and things haven't changed. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah.
So that's
good. I try.
We should write Kohberger and tell him that you scored higher on your IQ test than him, just to see.
That would
right back.
I bet he would love that. I know there's so much about this case that I've looked into. I mean, a lot of people, I guess, question so much about this case and the information that I've gotten. It's a lot of it is just because I've saved it all. I mean, this is my folder. These are a couple of my folders. These are all the links. Like,
I don't know when the last time you.
These are all the images.
Wait, when was the last time you've gone back and looked at some of your lives from a few years ago? Because I was watching one, and you I didn't realize you had his friends on and stuff.
Yeah, I've had his friends on the channel.
I was like rewatching stuff, like dumbfounded. I'm like, oh my God, like this is all information that you would die to have right now. And I think we just didn't, like, almost like we took it for granted back then because it was so new. So like, I feel like if you go back and you rewatch it, you wind up, not you personally, but anybody that goes back and rewatches it will pick up on things that you're like, oh, wow. Like at the time, we might not have seen that as relevant as we do now when we watch it.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. This is something I wanted to point out. These are the documents that I've read.
Good for you.
Case. No, I don't like reading.
No, but it shows that you know your stuff because of it, right? So you did your research.
Yeah, so much stuff. I mean, there's images, audio. I have. Let's see. Yeah, so much stuff. So if anybody ever wanted to come and talk to me about this case, yeah, I got everything. I got a folder on the Karen Reed file case too. Is probably a stick. I know my stuff.
You've been on it since the beginning, so.
Yeah, I had on Bryan Kohberger's friend Bree on the channel. You know what? I think what I'll do is I may try to reuse that one and repost it out. See if it, so
I think you should. I don't know if you've watched it personally lately, but there's like stuff that if you rewatch it, that I think you'll see now differently than maybe you did when you first interviewed them, because it was so early in the case that we didn't know a lot of the stuff that we know now. So rewatching it, knowing what you know now, some of the things are like, oh, wow.
That's true.
I was like dumbfounded by a few of the things. I think you should repurpose that.
I haven't seen it since I haven't talked to Bree in a long, long time. Maybe I can convince her to come back on the channel. It's been a long time. I think that was shortly after his arrest.
It was. That's what I mean. It was so early on that we didn't know anything pretty much yet. So I think watching it back now, knowing what we know, you just see it differently, or at least I did. Because I watched it back then. I just forgot about it. And then when I saw it again, I'm like, wait a minute. Daniel had his friend on. That's right. And I was like watching it. And that was back when you had Jaime on, and also he was on the episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were both on Big Blue, and I think they were both on the episode.
Yeah, Big Blue and Jaime both were on. They were on, and I got good news about those guys. They might be making an appearance again back on the channel soon. Maybe, maybe awesome. Not. Possibly not. It's not set in stone. I've talked to them, and it sounds like they're open to it. So it's a matter of time. Yeah. Just kind of schedules and stuff. Like Jaime was approached by somebody at one point, also like, "Hey, aren't you that guy on the show?" And I think he got kind of weirded out by it. And so
that's funny. That's funny, right? How some people would be like, "Yeah, that's me," and other people are like, "Oh no." It is funny how people react differently. And Blue, I feel like, just has so many things.
Yeah, Blue's a good guy.
Going back to school for like 1,000 different things.
Yeah. I think he just finished, but he's doing some of the clinicals, I think is what it's called, where you're in the hospital or on the on an ambulance, those type of things. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I talked to him both still. I'm actually gonna go hang out with Jaime and my other buddies here in a minute with playing some Fortnite. So if you guys like some gaming, go check us out there, I guess. I don't stream it. If you get shot by somebody named Drunk Turkey Dan, you know who it was. Well, Doctor, I appreciate you being on the show. It was great to have you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Guys, go check out her channel. The link is in the description. Great conversations that she has. You don't want to miss it. You had another doctor on not too long ago. Is that correct? Yes,
Dr. Schultz. She comes on sometimes on Monday nights. And so people seem to like her too. So we work together.
And what is it that what y'all talked about? Is it about this case or about things in general?
We talked about Bundy and about Bryan Kohberger. So we did a whole behavior breakdown. We talked about all of it. She didn't agree with me at first about the narcissistic. That's the best part about us too, is that we think very different. But then I got her to agree with me later on. She was like, "You were right." I was like, "I know I was. I just needed you to come with myself."
That's what I tell my wife on almost everything. Just kidding. She's probably going to yell at me right now. You'll probably hear her scream when there it goes.
That's great.
Oh, guys,
thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody on the show. I love this group. You guys are great.
Thank you, guys. I'll be back probably tomorrow night, maybe Friday night, but I'll be back again and we'll talk more about this case and more of the information. I got something special for everybody. Peace out.
Thank you.
But it's too late now. I remember you and me, and how careless we could be.
All day and all night, we'd stay up, it felt so right. We were so young, we were so dumb. We would get drunk and then hook up. We were okay, we were alright, staying awake till the sunrise. We were in love, couldn't stop us, like a good drug, never run.
We hook up in my car, driving so far, play you guitar, you'd show me your art, let down our guards, think with our hearts, stare at the stars, we were never apart, drinking too young, way too much fun, out in the sun, open when it's gone, took you to prom, dance to our song, dance all night long till the lights come on.
Late now, I remember everything, and how careless we could be, and how careless we could be, and how careless